everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I'm super excited to guide you through today's topic. We're going to talk about something that is absolutely crucial, but honestly, kind of misunderstood. We're talking about navigating ADA schedule accommodations. If your disability makes working a rigid standard schedule feel like an uphill battle, requesting a change can seem, well, incredibly daunting. But today, we're going to take a deep breath, look at the facts calmly, and break down exactly how this whole process works.
So let's just lay out the roadmap for our practical guidebook today. First, we'll look at the overlooked solution. Then we'll run through the specific types of schedule changes available to you. After that, we'll dive into writing strong documentation, look at how these accommodations play out in practice, and finally, we'll cover boundaries and your next steps. The goal here? To lower your anxiety by showing you exactly what to expect.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the overlooked solution.
I want to start by asking a question that seems to dominate every single conversation about workplace accommodations lately. Is remote work the only option? I mean, whenever we hear about the ADA in the workplace right now, working from home gets literally all the spotlight. But focusing only on remote work leaves a massive, highly effective tool completely in the shadows.
There's a major paradigm shift we really need to talk about here. Changing when you work can honestly be just as impactful as where you work. In fact, schedule modifications are actually among the most commonly requested and approved ADA accommodations out there. If a disability makes a standard, rigid schedule impossible to manage, a simple adjustment to your hours might be exactly the thing you need to keep crushing your essential job functions. It isn't always about leaving the office. It's about making the time you do work actually work for you.
Moving right along to Section 2, Types of Schedule Changes. Under the ADA, you've got a surprisingly broad menu of options. The law doesn't box you into just one rigid type of request. Really, any change to when, how much, or how predictably you work can be a reasonable accommodation. We're talking flexible start and end times, which, by the way, is one of the most frequently approved accommodations out there. There's also intermittent leave, reduced hours, modified shifts for folks whose symptoms peak at certain times of the day, and even protected time for medical appointments, which is a total game changer because it's completely distinct from just burning through your standard PTO.
Let's actually zero in on one that causes a ton of confusion. Intermittent leave. This allows for unscheduled time off, whether that's full days or just a few hours, when a disability unpredictably flares up. And here's the crucial part. This time off does not count against standard attendance policies. It's an absolute lifeline for conditions with unpredictable patterns. Now, quick clarification here. Intermittent leave also exists under a completely different law called FMLA. Just so we're clear, the platform we'll be discussing later, WorkWell, handles ADA evaluation requests only. They don't do FMLA certifications. They are totally separate things. So here's the real takeaway. Schedule modifications are often way easier to get approved than remote work. Why is that? Well, mostly because they don't require changing where you work or messing with the supervision structures your company already has set up. For knowledge workers or roles that don't rely on strict shift coverage, a flexible schedule is low cost and super easy for a manager to implement. So if an employer is dragging their feet on a full remote work request, a schedule change can be the perfect frictionless solution.
Okay, let's get into the how-to phase with Section 3, writing strong documentation.
To actually get an accommodation approved, your documentation needs to meet EEOC guidance. Basically, it has to cover 4 main bases. First, it has to confirm a genuine, clinically recognized mental or psychological disorder assessed by a qualified provider. Second, it needs to explicitly name the specific functional limitation that condition causes. Third, it has to recommend a specific schedule change. And fourth, it must provide the clinical rationale connecting the disorder, the limitation, and the requested change. You don't necessarily need a formal diagnosis code legally, but you absolutely have to substantiate how your condition limits a major life activity. Let's compare 2 different ways this can look. Imagine a doctor's note that simply says, needs flexible scheduling. That's incredibly vague, right? And honestly, employers often push back on that. Now compare that to a clinically sound request that says, functional limitation during a specific time window requires a specific schedule adjustment. This right here is our core mantra for this explainer. Specific beats vague. Every time. You have to clearly outline exactly why the adjustment addresses the limitation.
Let's see how this actually translates into the real world in Section 4, Accommodations in Practice. Think about how clinical realities translate into exact schedule modifications. Take ADHD, for example. If stimulant medication takes, say, 60 to 90 minutes to kick in, an 8 a.m. start literally wastes your most productive hour.
But a 9:30 a.m. start, that aligns your workday perfectly with your medication window. Or consider PTSD. Acute episodes triggered by unpredictable stressors can be managed with intermittent leave, which protects you from attendance violations. And for a physical condition like fibromyalgia, where morning stiffness and pain are severe but ease up a bit later in the day, a later start time lets those symptoms settle before you have to tackle cognitively demanding work. It is all about matching the schedule to the specific clinical need.
Oh, and here is a fantastic piece of news. You don't have to choose just one. Schedule and location requests can actually be seamlessly combined into a single accommodation letter. Many people find that a hybrid approach, like, say, working remotely 3 days a week while also having a flexible 9:30 a.m. start 5 days a week, gives them the most comprehensive coverage for their needs. There's absolutely no rule out there saying you can only ask for one accommodation at a time.
Which brings us to our final stretch, Section 5, Boundaries and Next Steps.
Now, we do need to ground ourselves in the reality of this process for a second. Employers retain discretion. A doctor's letter does not legally guarantee an automatic approval. The ADA requires your employer to engage in a good faith interactive process. What that means is they can approve it, sure, but they can also deny it, ask for more medical info, or offer a counterproposal. They aren't required to eliminate essential job functions. Keep in mind, this explainer is strictly educational. It's not legal advice, and ultimately, accommodation decisions sit with your employer.
So how do you actually get this kind of specific documentation? Let's demystify the process using WorkWell Evals as our example. WorkWell is a telehealth platform that connects employees directly with PsyPact licensed psychologists. And the process is actually remarkably straightforward. First, you just complete an online intake. Second, you fill out a clinical questionnaire. Third, you hop on a focused 15-minute video consult with the psychologist. And finally, if the provider independently determines it's clinically appropriate, you receive your letter within 1 to 2 business days. To put a number on it, the cost for the standard evaluation through WorkWell is a flat $169. They designed it to be accessible and straightforward, so there are no hidden fees for the evaluation process itself. Also, because WorkWell connects you with PSC/PACC licensed psychologists, this service is fully remote and it's available across 42 different states. It's really a modern solution for a modern workforce. So if you've been listening to this explainer and recognizing your own struggles with a rigid schedule, and you feel like an evaluation could help you secure the ADA accommodations you really need, your next step is super clear. You can just head over and book your evaluation at workwellals.com. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. What could your workday actually look like if your schedule worked with your disability instead of against it? Just imagine the reduction in burnout. Think about the increase in your focus and overall well-being. A well-documented schedule accommodation isn't about working less. It is entirely about working better. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep advocating for yourselves, and I'll see you next time.